it bad. This is care of it. Okay. Thing to do. Project. So tomorrow to you about and science is how something is really boring. First lecture of I'm going to go through traditional software. Right? We're going to move on to a way. It's kind of the method we use in the course. So lectures, and then post the teams, which are executive and divide into teams, and just like line that I used this division meeting exception. One team has 5 remote all kind of Kalmar, even though that's a little bit different. Beginning 7 teams, one has been based on idea. We mix network security and software technology people. Without people take in as digital course. And we also look at your grades from about 1. And so I spread even based. That's the only thing I have, right? Just assume that grade really well reflect passive when it comes to kind of course developing software. So that's for the teams. Now, anybody here is on that no or suspect not to take the course, please let me know. What will happen is start this work and one becomes much than the other people drop. Just come at the break and tell me, and I knock them the contact, right? So you kick some enemy off. You won't be able to. How do I know? No, I want to know something. Take this course, still register the course, then I reach out to them and ask the course, so we can get as clear as possible. There will be during the course. If you drop it, there will be. I would kick out. I like to do that. That's a little bit different in a based course. People freelance there, doing things team, right? In the versus failure, what do I care? Here, failing, somebody affected by your. It's even a grade might by your failure. So it's interesting. People who perform in their way, saying that exactly, but people not like big participants for a period of will be. Okay? Warning first. No, it's not from the lightning from the. It will be a get kicked out. Okay. Actually, since I'm talking about those kind of things, so we will start the projects on Thursday and Friday, right? each team, starting Thursday, or starting this week, each team will have a 1-hour meeting. It might be 1.5 hours, the first meeting we have. But we'll have a 1-hour meeting. So if you look at the schedule in Time Edit, you might get scared, right? Because it says that every Thursday and Friday is fully booked on this course. That's just that I can block the room. You will be required to attend 1 meeting per week with some teaching staff on Thursday or Friday. And which day that is depends on, I'm open to kind of adjust when which team is meeting to your schedules so that we don't introduce unnecessary collisions with other courses and stuff like that. But we have a few days to figure these things out, the small logistical things. Okay, so project management. I'll tell you a little bit about myself because we all like to talk about ourselves, don't we? But that's not really why I do it here. Maybe a little bit. But it's mostly because I've actually done this in industry for many, many years. So I have not read this in a book and developed. I have a PhD in computer science, in algorithms and data structures. I'm a theoretician by training. My PhD thesis didn't have a single line of, I didn't write a single line of code. But it's just theorems and proofs. So theoretician from the beginning. Then I met my wife, or my now wife. And she's Chinese, but grew up mostly in the US. And she lived in Europe, and she said, I'm going back to New York. She said, what about me? Well, you know, figure out a way. If you want to be with me, you figure out a way to get to the US. If somebody had asked me that before I met her, would you consider moving to the United States of America? I would have said, no, it's the last place I want to go to. It's like the mecca of capitalism, New York City. Right? What do I want to do with that? I will stay in academia. But, you know, love is not following reason, right? People seem to think, some people think that, the bigger decisions we make in life, right? They are really rational decisions. I said, yeah, like picking your partner in your house, right? It's just completely irrational. We kid ourselves that we can somehow justify our decisions. It's just nonsense. So I left for New York City. I was at the university there for a couple of years, and then I ran out of money. So in New York, my visa expired, so I got married. I would have gotten married anyway eventually, but it wouldn't have happened then. I think we both cried all the way to City Hall, It was like disaster. I ended up okay. And so I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do? I'm a theoretician. I'm not trained for work in industry. So what do? I don't have any practical skills. I didn't know how to code. So I was thinking, so this is 1995. So I was thinking, okay, I need to make myself marketable somehow. And so I said, well, you know what? Maybe this Java thing could be something. Java was in alpha. Right? In alpha, there was one book on Java. Can you imagine the time there was one book on Java? It was called Hooked on Java. Hooked on Java, and each page in the book was dedicated to an applet and a URL for that applet. Because that was the idea in the beginning, right? That the code runs everywhere, and you write it somewhere, then runs everywhere, particularly on the clients, right? You wanted to have richer clients. That was the kind of the initial idea. So I learned Java, sold myself as a Java programmer, and since nobody knew Java, it wasn't that difficult, So there was this. I ran into this Russian theoretical physicist who was manager at the technology company in New York, and he said, I think you're a smart guy. I'm going to hire you. Right? So he hired me. I did a little bit of coding, and then my career took off in New York. So I spent 14 years in the industry in New York City during the rah-rah years, really, like late 90s. You were filthy rich on paper one day, and then dirt poor the next day because the stock market went like this. Right? And then, but everything was still kind of rosy, and everything was kind of going up and up and up, and then came the crash, right? Like 2000, B2C just in the shitter. A year later, B2B in the shitter. And it's just desert, like there's no money around to invest in any companies and nothing, it's just dead. So I was even unemployed for like a year or something. It was like impossible to find anything. So I went traveling instead, actually. Then it started to pick up again, a little bit again. I started one company during this downturn, which, you know, didn't work out. And then I joined a number of startups. I was chief technology officer of these startups. Eventually ended up at DoubleClick. DoubleClick is the, at the time, was the biggest advertising technology company. And in 2007, I think it was, we heard that there was a bidding on DoubleClick. And it was Google, Microsoft, and Yahoo were bidding, right? Bidding started at $2.1 billion, right? And $1 billion later, Google turned out the winner, right? So we were acquired by Google, so I ended up at Google instead. And at Google, I was responsible for about 150 technical staff in 5 locations. 4 different time zones, I think I had. And I was there responsible for implementing something called Agile Project Management across this organization of about 300 engineers at the time. Right? So I've done this there. And I'll talk a little bit later about, I think, why we did it. Then I moved to Växjö from Brooklyn. Right? And most people just scratch their heads. Yeah, why? What were you thinking? Well, the thing is, I had been in New York for 16 years. My daughter was 4. I really wanted her to learn how to ski and skate rather than how to use a subway pass. Right? Life in a big city like that is if you talk to people who live in big cities with kids, they say, well, it's great because there's so many activities for the kids and the quality is so good. Well, guess what? The kids don't give a shit about the quality, right? It doesn't matter the quality of that play you take them to, you know. It's fun for them anyway, so it doesn't matter so much. I simply wanted a more natural life for her, and I also wanted her to actually to grow up with the Swedish values, which I think are pretty good, especially relative to the American ones. And I also wanted to be closer to nature. I asked myself one day, did I touch or walk on anything today that's not man-made? And the answer was, not even close. So I felt like this distance from Mother Earth, right? And Mother Earth, that's where I came from, and that's where I will go back to when this short span of time, a wonderful time of mine is over in this fantastic world, right? Where the graphics are fantastic. So moved from Brooklyn to Växjö, went to started at Linnaeus University. I was here for a few years, then I started to itch, and I left. I started a company, and that failed. And so after a couple of years, I came back to academia, and late July, it's over. Late July, we're moving to Silicon Valley, right between San Francisco and San Jose, on the peninsula, just the northern tip of Silicon Valley. What I'm going to do, I have no idea. Literally no idea. Neither does my wife. But we just decided that, you know, we want to move somewhere where we want to live. Her family is there too, which also played into this. We want to move somewhere we want to live rather than moving for a job somewhere. The job will you know, you can always come back if it doesn't work out. But we're moving, the whole thing was selling our house and shipping a container, and we're history. Yeah, so that's me. And now for the exciting stuff. Yeah, this will not be fun. We still need to do it. Still need to do it. You know, not everything can be like instant gratification. You have plenty of that in your spare time. So, what is a project? Well, it's a temporary effort to accomplish something, right? Product, a service, or some form of result, right? You have a goal. The project has a goal, which are sometimes called requirements or the scope of the project. This is very important. A project has a time frame. If there's no time frame, it's not a project. Then it is business as usual. Plenty of people work on in this kind of environments too. This business as usual. You might work on maintenance of some system, whatever it is. Not necessarily project-based. A project has resources, typically people and money if you need to buy stuff. Somebody owns the project high up in the organization, because if nobody owns it high up in the organization, it will never be finished. Because those people high up, they're going to look down and see, hey, I need some resources for this other pet project that I have. Oh, those guys, who cares about what those guys are doing? Well, none of my peers or nobody higher up in the organization, I'm just going to grab those guys and work on my project. And so that project they worked on gets terminated, right? So having, sorry, this is really executive response I'm talking. Somebody high up needs to say, yes, I want this done. Very important and often ignored. And it has some form of budget. Project management, well, that is about managing, achieving the project goals while adhering to whatever restrictions we have. Right? So, for example, establishment of clear and achievable goals. They're responsible for planning and organizing, securing, managing resources, balancing demand, communicating. This is also something that people tend to underestimate the importance of. Communication about, because you're sitting in the project, you know how things are going, but you tend to forget that there's an organization around you who are also interested in how this project is going. And so you need to communicate to them. Because if you don't do that, they might pull the plug on you, right? Because they don't know what you're doing. And the biggest challenge, as in most facets of life, is human beings, right? We are these irrational, emotional, never freaking know how we're going to react to things. Right? That's kind of the beauty of it too, isn't it? It would have been so boring, it would have been predictable. And changing and incomplete requirements. If you tend to ask software developers, what is the most annoying thing in your job? They're going to say, when people change things on me, you know? I just want them to tell me what to do, and then let me do that. I don't want people to come in and change, modify things all the time. Now, this is a kind of a typical organizational chart. So you have a CEO at the top, and then we're sales, marketing, finance, product management, engineering. Typically, project management is part of engineering. So where does a project come from? Well, typically comes from there, from product management, right? I mean, it's their job. Product management, their job is to understand the market demands, translate that into requirements so that your organization can actually meet those market demands. So it's a product manager who's responsible for understanding what's going out there, going on out there. It's not like they always do. Right? Some of them just fake it till they make it, you know. But sometimes it could also come from the engineering organization, for example. The engineering organization might say, you know what? If we change these things around, we will be able to cut our costs a bit, right? Or we can take these 3-4 features and modify them a little bit, and then we have another feature for our customers. So something that product management might not have thought of because they don't understand the technology, but the engineering folks, the programmers, they see that that, well, it's just from a technical point of view, it's just to modify this and add a couple of adapters and then glue it together again, and we had something entirely new. Right? So, you'll see this a few times. So this is so first today I'm going to talk about until the end, until towards the end, about the traditional project life cycle, like how have projects traditionally been run. And it's in a very, very structured way. So there's some form of initiation, and we go through all of these phases in detail. Essentially about what is this? What is this about? Why are we doing this? Planning, how are we going to do this? Once you've planned, you do it, and then eventually you're finished, right? Simple and easy. Problem is it never works. So initiation, we're asking the question why. What is the business value? If there is no business value, assuming you are in a kind of in a revenue-hungry kind of organization rather than in the public sector, if there's no business value, clear stated business value, you won't be allowed to do it. Just forget about it. You need to confirm who is sponsoring this. How am I going to get funding for this? How is this going to happen? What is it that we're going to do? Who cares about what we're doing? Engage those folks. Come up with some form of high-level plan. I'll give you examples of these. And identify, do we need help from somewhere else, from outside of where we are right now? We might need kind of consulting services from somewhere, right? It needs to be stated in the initiation phase. Planning phase, here we go down one level of details when it comes to requirements, trying to figure out how will this be accomplished from a technical point of view, primarily, at least for this audience purpose. Some preliminary staffing plan, who's going to do it, when is it going to start, when will it be done, how much money do we need, what are the risks here, are there any risks, there might be some uncertainties, we see examples of this, and draft the communication plan. Okay, so now we have a plan, and now it's just a matter of doing it. We execute, we communicate while we execute, we monitor the progress because we have a plan. Right? It's like the plan is like a budget in finance, right? This plan, so we check, are we following this plan, or do we need to modify something? Monitor those risks that we have identified early on. New risks are going to pop up. Tracking any changes that are being made to the requirements. And we keep the plan up to date. Right? Boring. And then we're done, right? So we conduct some form of project review. We show it to those who are interested in it, the stakeholders. We develop some form of handover plan because typically, talking about software projects now, typically the ones who are actually building something are not necessarily the ones who will maintain it. Right? Because typically you put more junior folks in maintenance roles in order to learn things. Your bigger, your real big guns, right? You do not put them on maintenance, right? The real superstars, they work on new things all the time, right? And then you have some form of retrospective. What did we learn from this project that we did? And then if this is the project life cycle, there's also kind of a inside of the execution and control here. This is the traditional software development life cycle, which essentially mimics this one. So once you start to execute, you need to plan. This is now from a more technical perspective. You need to analyze the problem. You come up with a design, and then you implement that design, and you test it to make sure that the quality is okay, and then you hand it over to maintenance and support. And this is something you always need to keep in mind when you're working on projects. Assuming you fix quality and performance of the system that you're building. If you change one of these three, you have to change at least another one. Right? If you want it to be done faster, that's typically what they're asking, right? They're coming and telling you, I want this done faster. What would it take for you to deliver this a month before the scheduled delivery? Well, either you cut scope, right? You do less things, or you add resources so you can actually do more things in a shorter period, the same amount of things in a shorter period of time, right? If you're cutting cost, for example, say, we cannot pay this much for this. Well, either you need to cut scope, or the schedule is going to slip. It's going to take longer to deliver this. Right? Always keep this in mind. So here's an example. So we use this example, and we'll go through kind of a pet project management for this. So the idea is here that Sergey Brin, who's one of the co-founders of Google, he would like for users to be able to set aside search results, to process, consume them at a later time. And the motivation is this, that if you think of a search engine, by the way, search as sophisticated as it is in one way, as pathetic it is in another way. Because if you think about the search engine, the assumption that it has been designed under the assumption that the user scenario is that it's something you want to know, right? I want to know something. So I start a session with the search engine, type something in, look at the search results, probably modify my query a little bit, maybe add some Boolean stuff, maybe specify file formats or whatever it is to simply narrow down the result set so that it becomes manageable for me. Have you thought of that, by the way? Search engine interfaces looked identical 20 years ago. It's just a text field. Right? It's only a text field. That's all we are offered. So we have this vast ocean of information, and the only tool they give me to find stuff there is the written word. What if I want to know who designed this chair? Completely out of luck. No idea. It doesn't help me at all. Right? So people who think that search is done, well, think again. It's going to be dramatically different, especially how we interact with it. Right? So, so I call the former case here when you just expected to find the result and then walk away. I call that hit and run search. Right? You find the answer you're looking for. Well, what if you're on some form of knowledge acquisition pursuit? Right? Say you decide you want to build a wooden sailboat. And I'm starting to collect resources now about wooden sailboats. I don't want to read them all at the same time, right? Because I'm collecting some things, and then later on I go into my collection and I see, okay, which ones might be interesting now, right? Well, Google doesn't support any of that. When I ask people, how do you do if you start a knowledge acquisition effort, right? You're collecting resources. How do you do that? Do you use bookmarks or favorites? Nobody uses bookmarks or favorites, right? And part of the reason is that it's too poor, the interface for, and then they get stale, and it's like, so a lot of people, I ask this question, they say, well, I store them in a Word document. Jesus. Right? I mean, I don't blame them really, because Google, kind of the engine, the core in the system, for most people, they're not providing you with any peripheral tools to do knowledge acquisition. You're on your own. You take care of that yourself. Of course, now there are kind of solutions, like I don't know if any of you use like Evernote, for example, for collecting stuff. There's another number of services out there. It's getting a little bit better now. But so Sergey wanted this to happen. So he wanted us to be able to set aside search for some of these search results rather than visit all of them now that you're interested in, or, which we all do, open the interesting one up in new tabs, right? Good luck finding a tab after that. I think I have probably 10, 12 browser windows with, on average, maybe 10 tabs in each one of them. And it is because of this problem, really. I don't dare to close them, because how am I going to find them again? Where am I going to put them? Right? And so, and just kind of a little sidetrack here, but so if I want to find a tab, how? How do I find one of 120 tabs? Right? I can kind of minimize things and see the first tab in every browser window. But what about the other one? How do I know? Well, now I need to somehow, okay, that browser, those tabs in that browser, they are kind of in that kind of topic, and those in that kind of topic. Manual, right? Manual, error prone. Okay, you know what? Let's take a 10 minutes break here. 10 minutes, okay? Started late, sorry. 10. Let's go. Okay, I'm going to start. I got to start. Shh. Okay, so we're going to go through these little phases with this basket of search results, little pet project. So initiation. What's the business value? Users want this, and if we give them what they want, we make more money on ads. What do you think? You think Google thinks like that? The surprising answer is actually yes. Right? Google is really trying to make it as good as possible for the end user. A few years ago, Google, they constantly changed the ordering of the search results by changing the signals, that they call them signals, that affect how they order the search results, right? And a couple of years ago, they added a new signal, and that signal was response time of the page that is one of the search results, right? And you figure, why would Google care about that? Well, they care about that because if that page has a slow response time, then that's bad for the end user's experience, so it's bad for Google. As a matter of fact, a lot of people would think that it's Google that's slow, because it was Google you went to, right? So they are really, really idealistic in one sense, right? In one sense. But at the end of the day, they are in business in order to make money, right? That's by law, they need to maximize shareholder value. That's one of the problems with corporations in general. Can somebody again please let them in? I can talk more about Google. I actually went to, this was funny, I went to a presentation once by Eric Schmidt, who was then the CEO, who's now the chairman. And he said, guys, we've found the only legal way of printing money. I said, this is unbelievable. We're just printing money. Right? Interestingly, in today's kind of data privacy controversy atmosphere, if your personal data is so valuable, which it is, right? I mean, it's the oil of the tech industry. It's like this. It is all about personal data. The rest is fluff. Amazon is in personal data business. That's what they're doing. If this personal data is so, as a Facebook actually, they made, I think it was last fall, $10 on average per user in revenue for that quarter. 3 months, $10. They got $10. They made $10 from your personal data. Right? Well, I don't think you treat your personal data as if it's that valuable. And that is a mismatch we have in society today. Right? On the other hand, not a sidetrack, the reason personal data is so useful is because it's used to target advertising, and unfortunately we don't have more than 2 business models online really when it comes to media. It's subscription or ad-based, right? And as Tim Berners-Lee, who's the kind of the creator or initiator of the World Wide Web in the 90s, he went out 2 weeks ago and said that there's two big problems he's worried about the net. There's two big problems, he said. One is media concentration, right? The idea was the opposite. The idea was to have this diverse variety of sources everywhere and have access to them. Now we're starting to see big companies starting to control instead, like Facebook and Google then in particular, right? What was I going to say about that? What was I saying?
They make money with advertising.
Yeah, they make money. But are we sure there is not another business model? So if advertising is not important as a way to generate revenue, well then personal data wouldn't be as interesting to them anymore. Right? So if you can find another way for them to make money, they don't necessarily care about your personal data, right? But we haven't found that yet. I mean, there've been some dabbling in like micropayments and some somewhat alternative ways, but trust me, there's going to be other business models. There's not only going to be subscription or ad supported content in the future. That's got to change. Okay, so executive sponsor, Sergey Brin. Scope, we're going to allow users to set aside search results to revisit at a later time. Stakeholders, essentially everybody, including Sergey Brin. Resources, well, we need programmers, QA analysts, designers, usability folks, translators, because we need to roll it out in multiple languages. Now we start planning. So we're going to put a button next to, it's simplistic, so bear with me here. A button next to each search result that allows the user to add that search result to their basket, right? And in this basket, they should be able to see all whatever they have in that basket, and they should be able to delete and essentially manage that basket of search results. We're going to start 25th of September, finish 1st of December. And here are some, so this is a high-level plan, right? So here are the milestones. After a week, we should have the buttons there. A couple of weeks later, the basket functionalities should be complete. 2 weeks after that, we should have done usability testing of it. A couple of weeks after that, translation should be done. Integration testing, performance testing, and demo to stakeholders. Typical project, high-level project plan. How are we going to do this? We're going to use the UI engineering team, search UI engineering team to add the buttons, and we're going to use a team from Google Checkout. Google Checkout, by the way, I don't know if it exists anymore. It was developed as a direct competitor to PayPal, right? Back in maybe 10, 15 years ago or something like that. An interesting thing with Google Checkout is that when the product manager for Google Checkout presented this checkout project, not a sidetrack, checkout project, he proudly said that, you know, at these kind of prominent sites, we have negotiated an exclusive, right? So only Google Checkout, no PayPal there, right? And you know what the executive said? Get out of here. We don't want that. That's not good for end users. We want PayPal there as well. That's better for end users. So sometimes you kind of, it brings a smile to your face, right? They're actually doing something that, yeah, maybe they are taking my interest anyway, despite everything. We will allocate 30 FTE full-time employee months. Sometimes I just call them heads. It's kind of sad, isn't it? Risks, well, the checkout team might run late in the current project, and we haven't identified translation resources yet. And how we're going to communicate, we're going to have a weekly status report to Sergey and the search product management, who are also particularly interested in this kind of functionality. And so we execute, right? Or we actually do those things, which is a software development lifecycle. We do some analysis, design, etc., etc. And we typically use some form of Gantt chart. Some of you have probably seen the Gantt chart, which allows you kind of to track dependencies between things. And then we're done. We demo it to Sergey and the search product managers. and we find who's going to support it, and we deploy the feature to end users, and we're done. Right? Pet project. Here's a little bit bigger pet project. This is John. John, in the late 90s, he started a web agency, you know, because he figured, you know, that's the future. And you can see he likes money, right? and so he has a little agency that works well, right? And so he has 2 folks in customer support. And sadly, this is a pretty good reflection of the genders in different roles in technology companies, right? Customer support people, female. Software developers, typically male. We all wish it were different. But don't for an instant imagine it can be any different, because it is what it is. Right? And female UI design and tester. And I've never seen a female operations person. Right? It's always a guy. Okay. Now, as I said, you know, John likes money. So he goes to lunch, and when he comes back from lunch one day, he has this fabulous idea, or he thinks it's fabulous. What? Animation. He visits these 5 restaurants typically for lunch. And which one he's going to go to for lunch depends on what they're serving, the daily specials. Right? So, how does he know where to go? Well, he could check those restaurants' websites before going for lunch and see what they have to offer, but you know, sometimes it's not up to date, and it's kind of cumbersome to go to 5 different websites to see what they have for lunch. Right? He would like to have access to this in one place. I'm so surprised this kind of stuff doesn't exist yet. I've been talking about this for 10 years. It's so simple. He could, I mean, on Mondays in the local paper, they post the menus for these restaurants. He could tear that one out and carry that one with him, right? But you're not supposed to do that these days, right? So let's build a service that makes this possible. So we're going to go through those phases again. Initiation. So what are we going to do here? Well, restaurants should be able to, we should offer this service to customers and restaurants, the restaurants and the customers of those restaurants. Right? So the restaurant should be able to enter the daily special through some web-based interface. Customers should be able to select which restaurant they want to get information from through a responsive web UI. Every Monday morning, we're going to send an email to all customers informing them of the offerings at the restaurants that they have selected. Right? So John is going to get an email with 5 rows on it and see what the daily specials are. Right? And John has already spoken to a few restaurants, and they're very interested, he says. Also, we would like for restaurants to authenticate, but is there a way to avoid for end customers to authenticate somehow, to not force them to remember another password? What's the business value here? Well, we can charge restaurants a fee for including their offerings. But more importantly, we're creating kind of a one-to-one marketing channel here for restaurants. Right? Restaurants can now, potentially using this service, reach individual customers. Right? So who knows what this is going to generate in the future. John is the sponsor, and there's almost nothing else going on, so most of the team will be available to work on this. Engage stakeholders. John is already engaged. He's very engaged. Identify individuals at restaurants, some end users in effect, right, to see what they think of this. Right? And then a high-level plan is as follows. We pitch the service to downtown restaurants. We gather requirements from end users. We build a web UI for restaurants, build a web UI for customers, and we build some form of list management email execution engine so we can actually send these emails out. Now, going a little bit deeper into scope, for restaurants, as we said, it should be a web UI, authentication required, Restaurants should be able to sign up a custom email address themselves. Customers, web UI without authentication, they should be able to make and update selections of restaurants, and they should be able to unsubscribe from the whole thing. Internally, we need to be able to send emails. We need to be able to manage lists of email addresses. Open questions: how do we avoid authentication for end customers, regular customers? Can restaurants see who selected them? Open question. Bounce and open rates. You know what that is? When you send emails, if you send emails, it's kind of in your interest to know whether it arrived, right? Number one, did it arrive? Number two, did the recipient open this email and actually see what was in it, right? We need to deal with that, because otherwise we won't know if we have any impact or not. How? Well, we're going to use PHP, MySQL, because that's the stack we're using in this organization, and we use existing hardware infrastructure to host this, because we have plenty of resources there. Web UI, SSL for security, simple authentication, some password policy functionalities. You can reset your password if you forgot it, and so on. And we need then a database of the offers from restaurants. Web UI, database selections, unsubscription, and then the email sending stuffy. Budget 11 person months, and we're going to use 1.5 developers, because Fred needs to do 50% maintenance. He's not available full time. Emma is available. Tom is available half part-time. Malin part-time, and John is the project manager. Very white teeth. Schedule: we start October 1st, we end January 1st. Milestones: so after a week we should have requirements, and we should also have a database schema. Week later we should have UI design done. 2 weeks later we should have a restaurant UI that's functional. Week after that, customer UI functional. Week after that, email sending functional. 2 weeks after that, all security aspects dealt with. Functional testing complete. The week after that, another week, performance testing. 22nd of November or December, we make it available to friends and family. And after New Year's, we make it available to everybody. Risks: can we be viewed as spammers and end up in the bulk mail folder? How do you deal with that? Right? I mean, if you send an email to somebody at gmail.com, for example, Google is sitting there looking at that email. I mean, I'm not saying they analyze this, which they probably do, but that's not my point here, right? My point here is that the recipient of that email is a customer of Google, right? They are a customer of Google. And so Google wants their experience to be as pleasant as possible, right? Google does not want any email to be delivered to your inbox, because you're getting too much spam and shit, right? So Google is sitting there trying to determine, is this spam or is this not spam? Right? How do you deal with that? Well, traditionally it's been mostly based on analysis of content of emails, but it's increasingly, there's another approach that's being taken to this. That approach, there is whitelisting, right? So Google might approve certain senders to always open up the gates for them and send things through. But in order to stop unwanted emails, what they typically do these days is that they check if you open them. If you open it last time, it's not likely to be spammed the next time. So stop clicking all that shit, guys. Because you're just telling them, I want more. Telling them it's okay. This is not spam to me. Right? You're doing it to yourself. Okay, so now we start. So here's now the plan in a extremely simplistic document. but it kind of covers it, right? So here says who's going to do what. This is start time and an end time to everything, and we're keeping track of when it actually ended and in the process how much has been done so far. So a week into the project, John has only delivered 50%. Well, maybe he was looking for money somewhere, too busy looking for money or something, I don't know. So now, and John's requirements were the input for design to these UIs, as well as to some extent the database schema. But you know, Tom being Tom, he kind of knows how it's going to be anyway, so he's done with his stuff even before the deadline, right? And since design is since requirements are late, design is starting to run late as well, right? Now we jump a week ahead. John finished. However, he was 5 days late. Emma managed to finish the restaurant UI design, but since John was late, she didn't manage to finish the custom UI design. And Vlad and Fred started a little bit of implementation because they got the requirements late, or the design late. Jump 2 weeks ahead. Now the restaurant UI is done. Design is still not complete. Emma hasn't completed it. So, but implementation is starting anyway because we know enough in order to start implementation. Jump a month ahead. Vlad has been sick for a week. Probably has kids. And so, it's 30th of November. He should have been done with, for example, on subscription, 15th of November. It's only half done, and he couldn't even get started on the security aspects for the end customers. 2 weeks ahead, Vlad is still behind. Custom UI is not ready to test. Fred got sick. Guess where he got it from? And so there actually, so at this point we realize we're not going to hit the delivery date, so we need to delay launch, right? We delay launch until 15th of January. Besides, it's a bad idea to roll something out just before holidays anyway, you know, because you're going to get calls and you don't want to get calls over the holidays. Not a few weeks ahead, 7th of January. Everything looks fine. However, the database needs some optimization, and we didn't realize this until now. So we delay launch another week. And so 15th of January, eventually we demo it to John. Handover plan, Marlon will be main customer support, Vlad will be main technical support, Tom will monitor resource usage, and he will also, because we forgot about that, develop some internal reports of service usage statistics so we actually know what is going on in the system. So the delay, John being a little bit busy and two developers getting sick a week each, cost 4 person months above budget, which in the big scheme of things is nothing. However, 4 person month versus 11, you know, it's like 35% above budget. So lessons learned. Don't rely on John only for requirements. Build in some buffer for people getting sick. Attack riskiest tasks earlier in the project. And we only have 5 restaurants, so I mean, John was so enthusiastic, right? Everybody wanted this, but it turned out there was only 5. So it's a matter of securing those clients earlier on. Okay, so now this is a nice example. This is actually a successful example of a software project. because things are really, really bleak. Really bleak. So the average project costs twice. Twice. And we're talking about big sums of money here in general, right? It takes twice as long as planned, and it has 65% of the functionality at completion. You might ask yourself the question, okay, if I know this, can I not modify my estimates in order to actually hit the target next time? Well, the thing is that if you do, if you build in enough buffer in your plan, then somebody high up is going to tell you, no, too expensive. Right? So you won't be allowed to do it. So it is this understood by both parties game that I'm going to promise you something, and we will shake hands that, yeah, I will deliver this, but we both know that I will never deliver what you're asking for. Right? But it keeps happening. Right? I mean, the kind of the devil you know. Right? When I worked at DoubleClick, this advertising company, I was responsible for a forecasting system. And this has to do with if an advertiser wants to run an advertising campaign, they might want to target, we'll see that tomorrow, I think, say users in 20 million impressions. I want to show this ad 20 million times to users in Scandinavia, for example, right? And I only want to show it in the middle of the day because for some reason I think that they're most receptive to my message in the middle of the day, right? Now, there are other campaigns running in this system with overlapping time periods, with overlapping targeting criteria. And so when this advertiser calls and asks, so can I buy 20 million from you? You cannot say, well, you know, you're asking me a question about the future. How would I know? Right? You need to be able to tell them with reasonable confidence whether you can sell what they're asking you to buy from you. Right? So we found a major bug in this system. Right? So the numbers were just wrong. So what do we do as a serious engineering manager? I fixed it. Right? I had my team fix it. And then I announced this to the sales folks who are the ones who are getting the calls from the advertisers. I said, we fixed the forecasting system, so now the numbers are much better, much better. And a few days later, I get a call that says, I want the old numbers. I said, yeah, but they were wrong. He says, I don't care. I want the old numbers. They worked for me. Right? This gravitation towards the familiar is so strong, right? When it comes to so many things in life, right? I mean, why do people stay in absolutely miserable relationships? The devil you know, right? It's at least you know how bad it is, right? The unknown, that's the worst, because we tend to think that we can control things. Right? Have you thought about this one? Okay, so and if you heard about this before, if you were to take Earth and compress it into maximal density, right? So eliminate all the distances between all particles, right? Eliminate all those distances. Do you know how big it becomes?
86.
I'm sorry?
86. Like a marble or something?
Yeah, it's like a pea or something like that, right? Little thing, right? Okay, so what does that tell you? It tells you that your density is not that different from the density of Earth, right? It's about the same. So, if you were to compress yourself, it would be even smaller, right? So, the conclusion here, and this is physics, is that we are sparse structures of particles. Right? Sparse structures of particles filled with void, or love, if you want to call it that. Right? Filled of universal consciousness, filled of source. Right? What makes everything go around. Right? Okay, so I'm this loosely connected, sparse structure of particles. And by the way, every single particle gets replaced. Right? Most of them get replaced within weeks. Some of them might take years. I think it's something in the bone marrow or something like that. It takes a longer period of time, right? So can safely essentially argue that there's not a single particle in me that was in me 3 years ago. Well, it begs the question, who am I, right? But that's not my point. My point is that, okay, so this structure of particles is close to the surface, this Earth's surface, right? Held down by gravity, right? Now, Earth is rotating at, I don't know, a few thousands kilometers an hour, I think, right? Now, Earth is rotating around the sun at even more thousands of kilometers an hour. And our galaxy is just shooting through space at an even higher speed. And here we are, these loose structures of particles trying to stay in control. And it's pretty pathetic, really. We're not in control. Everything is moving all the time. Okay, so IT projects are in a dire state. Dire state is called. Dire state. Right? So they did a survey, sent a questionnaire out to a lot of, I think these are mostly US-based companies, and asked them, why do projects fail? Number one reason, incomplete requirements. Number two, lack of user involvement. Number three, lack of resources, lack of executive support, changing requirements, unrealistic schedule, poor communication. Some projects do succeed. So why do they succeed? Again, this is not me guessing. This is results from a survey. User involvement, executive support. You see how high up that one is? That needs to be somebody up there who's saying, yeah, who's sanctioning this. Clear business objectives. Right? Why are we doing this? Not what. Why are we doing this? That you can adjust the scope. Agile process, and this is kind of what we're going to do in this course. And poor project project management expertise. Now, what are the problems? So these traditional the traditional way of managing a project leads to this, right? So now, why is that? Well, the thing is that traditional methodologies assume a predictable world. It assumes that the clear requirements are known at the beginning, right? And every product manager you ask is gonna think that they know. The thing is, they don't. It assumes that the rest of the world just grinds to a standstill while we develop our new product, and then the rest of the world starts again, so we can launch our new product. Well, guess what? In today's day and age, when it's so easy to develop new services and add new functionality to services, chances are that the competitive landscape, if this has taken you 6 months to build, competitive landscape has changed. So what you built for a situation that was 6 months ago. It doesn't fly anymore. It assumes that stakeholders don't change their minds. They're the most flimsy when it comes to changing their minds, the people at the top. It assumes that availability of resources doesn't change. Suppose your main cash cow, so you're running this project and then you have some other products and services that are bringing in your revenue. Suppose that one of those break. Well, this high-power developer you have here on this project is going to be moved to do that, because if we don't fix that, there is no project here, right? So resources are going to be pulled from you. So you cannot assume that you will get to keep your resources, even if you're promised. Right? And they will promise you, and they will not be malicious at all. They will promise you, and they will believe that you can have them, but it turns out you can't. So it might work for some types of projects. I've never seen it work particularly well, though. So just going to sketch now two different kind of approaches to things, and then we're going to tie this together tomorrow, really. So iterative methodologies, the motivation behind them is that requirements do change after the project starts. Right? It could be, just to give you a simple example here, right? Say you're building some web-based application, and then in the UI you need to select something from and you choose a Dropbox as a control for selecting something among, say that you have 10 things to choose from or something like that, right? So you're creating a Dropbox for this page, right? And then a week later, a sales guy is cutting a deal with some data provider. And so now the amount of data in that Dropbox is 3,000 items instead of 10. Right? Nobody knew that beforehand. We couldn't have known that, and we cannot design for everything possible happening. But what we need to do is be open to that things will change and not lock ourselves down. Right? And the world around us, as I said, changes. We need to embrace this change. Right? So iterative methodologies, they say change will happen. As the Buddhist says, it's the only constant. It's the only thing you know. Things will change. There was this, there was this Asian emperor or something from way back when, who was really wealthy, but he wasn't satisfied. He wasn't happy. So he sent for the wisest man in his kingdom, and he asked him, so why is this? How I have everything. How can I not be happy? So the wise man walks away, comes back a while later, and he gives the emperor a ring. Some of you know this story? Gives the emperor a ring, and he says to the emperor, whenever you feel down, dissatisfied, look at the inscription in the ring. Or if you feel really, really up, very happy, look at the inscription in the ring. And the inscription in the ring said, this too will pass. Right? Everything passes. It's just, we don't seem to emotionally be able to understand it, but it will change. Intellectually, I think we're fine with it most of the time. So iterative methodologies, and I would show you, give you an example of how it works, they embrace change, whereas traditional, essentially minimizing the impact of change. Here is our path through, and we're going to walk this path no matter what we encounter on the way. Right? And then if there are changes, well, then we create processes to manage the changes, the kind of offshoots or the exceptions from what we initially planned to do. So in iterative methodologies, what you do is that you iteratively improve the quality of the product. And here's an example of this. So Leonardo was asked to paint Mona Lisa, and so he makes a sketch, and he asks the person who commissioned him to do this, says, will this work? He says, no, she must be turned left. Well, it's a good thing he didn't finish it, right? Because then all that work would have been wasted. Right? It's a customer involvement. So he makes that change, adds some color, says, how about this? Well, her head is too big. Well, again, it's a good thing he didn't completely finish it. And he makes the head a little bit smaller. He says, is this better? I prefer bigger eyes, but for the price I pay, it's okay. Right? So iterative improvement of things, right? Don't do the whole thing. Don't wait to show it, until you've done the whole thing, but show along the way so that the customer, because at the end of the day, if you don't have a happy customer, the customer will not come back. Even if you built, even if you deliver to the customer what they asked for. Right? So we're in a situation where you actually need to help the customer understand what they want, because they don't know for sure. They think they know, but they don't know. As exemplified by new data, new change of requirements, really. I mean, you can't know that. They don't know that. So that's iterative. You slowly iterate to improve the quality of your solution. Incremental methodologies. Here the motivation, again, is that requirements do change. And furthermore, partial functionality is available, is valuable, has some value. Think of a, say that you were to develop a word processor. I don't know why you would do that, but say you wanted to develop a word processor, right? I don't know what the statistics about this anymore, but say, just for the sake of argument, say that 90% of Microsoft Word users might use less than 5% of the functionality in Microsoft Word, right? Okay, so if I were to develop a word processor, clearly the first thing I would do would be to implement those 5%, right? I can implement those 5%, and I can ship this, and I can actually start to generate revenues from this without even being close to a final product. Right? So the idea here is to break up the project into smaller chunks that each have business value on their own, and deal with one chunk at a time. So here we have, for example, 12 chunks of functionality. This is kind of a simplistic three-tier system. And so this is kind of indicating that here we have implemented both the UI. So this is the kind of UI level, middleware level, and back-end level. So here we have implemented a complete functionality. This functionality is complete. Here we have only done some UI work, and most of it is not even started yet. A little bit later, we might have completed some, and some stuff that you haven't already started. So haven't yet started, and eventually everything is done, right? So incremental. Right. Now, what is Agile? Agile is incremental plus iterative. So you pick a chunk of functionality, you iterate until you get that right, until the users are happy with that. Then you pick the next piece of functionality, you iterate on that one until the users are happy with that. That is, in a nutshell, is Agile. And Agile has a number of advantages. Significant one is visibility, because the business folks who are now looking at this project, right, and they're just drooling over all the commission they're going to make when they'll be able to sell this product that you're developing, but they want to know how it's going. In the traditional way of doing things, after a few weeks, all you would have would be like a database schema and any number of requirements documents that you produced. Show that to the product manager. See, this is what we've done so far. Well, it has no value. It has zero value. A document has no value. You can also, by demonstrating one chunk of functionality, this might get the product manager ideas of how to modify it. Which, you know what? Yeah, I kind of like that. So maybe we should, if we do that, maybe we could do that as well, or do the other thing differently, or whatever it is. So the product manager can actually modify what they want to have built. Traditional methodologies stated up front, right? You must decide way before the project starts even what you're going to do. you can generate business value earlier and risk reduces quicker. So the agile methodologies they were this kind of prompted by or motivated by the poor state of affairs in the software development industry in general, how poorly we as professionals actually deliver, right? There was a group of some, I think 10, 15, 20 kind of high-level computer scientists who got together in a place called Snowbird, Utah in, I don't know if it was 99 or 2001 or 2 or something like that. And said, okay guys, how are we going to fix this? Because this, you know, we have a bad rep, right? Nobody trusts us anymore, and for good reasons. They shouldn't be trusting us because we're lying to their face all the time. They force us to lie to them, but still, we are the ones lying, right? So we need to get better at doing this. So they formulated the Agile Manifesto, and it says, we value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. We value working software over comprehensive documentation. We value customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And we value responding to change over following a plan. Right? To summarize, what is a project? What is project management? We looked at the traditional project lifecycle. We looked at John's web agency. Talked a little bit about iterative methods, incremental methods, and then agile methodologies which combine these two. Ah, good timing. Next lecture, we're going to talk about agile project management, and in particular Scrum. We're going to go through the different roles in Scrum, the different ceremonies, meaning meetings, and the different artifacts, what's being produced, what's being used in Scrum. We're going to talk about planning when it comes to Agile, and another number of things. So, thank you today. So I will see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock again. 2 lectures tomorrow. Yeah, we just wanted to get all the lectures in so we can get started with the project. Thank you.